Show. Once again, I keep telling you, I'm so excited about this next guest. Not only, uh, develop a friendship, his impact in the community, his impact in Philly, his impact throughout. I'll go out to say throughout our country. I mean, like Eric has really been instrumental, man, and nothing but positivity. So I really appreciate you coming on, Eric. Eric Marsh, how you feeling, brother?
Man, I feel blessed. I feel blessed. I'm reeling a little bit when you was like throughout the country. It's like, wow.
Now receive
But
that.
yeah, I mean, have to again. We was just talking about leaning in, and I had to lean into that because I was just talking with some coworkers and my lady about, a couple conferences that I'm going to be doing, and a lot of travel happening, and so you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I can't deny it, and it's all really just the grace of God and luck and a blessing. So I'm
Yeah,
I'm glad to be here, bro.
yeah, and that's the part that even what we do on this podcast, we really try to dig into it because, of course, there's the Eric Marsh that's getting ready to go on this tour, but then there's the Eric Marsh that really people may not know about, maybe not even understand. So we just gonna get right into it and tell us a little bit about the younger Eric.
Oh wow, wow. Yeah, thank you. The younger Eric is the youngest of four boys. Growing up in Alany section of Philadelphia. Um, and my brothers were all a few years older than me, so minimum of maybe like 6 7 years older, so not exactly in the same age group. And what that did was it did two things, right? It left a certain distance there where I kind of sometimes felt like an only child, even though I had brothers. So I reaped the benefits of that, but I was often by myself. And so I also you know learned to be comfortable by myself with myself at an early age. And that's one of the things, because my family was close enough that I knew I had loving support around me. I had a household and I had family, but distance enough where I was able to have a different perspective. So I always tell people, you know from an early age I learned by watching other people's mistakes,
Mm.
right? So when my brothers would mess up and my mom would get out the switch or get out the slipper or the Hot Wheels track, or somebody was about to catch it, most of the time I was young enough where I was spared from that, but I would be able to watch and see. All right, I know not to do that with mom. I know not to get on the bad side that way. And so
Let,
I'm fortunate where I was able to actually learn from them in ways that I don't know if everybody could.
let me go back because wow, you hit me with something that I mean I'm the youngest of five,
Mm.
um, but you just hit something that being young you were able to, or like you said, it created a space for me to be, I mean, for you to be like comfortable with yourself. And then I think about, yeah, that's right. Also gave me a space to be who I am, being comfortable with I am, meaning that I didn't lean on them per se for a lot of things that I wanted to do. So it gave me a sense of a free mind, so to speak. I ended up playing basketball and things of that nature. Is that how you felt though? Was you were able to kind of develop you, Eric, the young man, and also be able to have a freedom of mind and thinking about, as we get into it, your future and some of the things that you're going to do.
I think it's important to recognize that it's actually, or actually was, a double-edged sword,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because distance is distance, whether you call it freedom or whether you call it longing or missing somebody, right? And so there are times, even now as an adult, where I recognize that distance or that separation between myself and my brothers, and I wish it wasn't there. I wish we had a closer relationship. But there's also times, again, I was allowed, as you said it so eloquently, to be able to develop, relatively on my own, but still within the comfort and confines of a family, right? And so, yeah, it's thank God the good outweighs the bad. So, my son actually told me something. I raised my son as a single father. Um, from the time that he was about a year and a half old. He's now almost 30 now. He's 27 this year, 28 this year. Excuse me.
Congratulations, brother.
Thank you. No, thank you. And he would often talk to people. I used to take him everywhere, and he's a black boy with a black dad. As a single dad, people would see us out together, and people would always tell him, "Oh, you don't know how lucky you are to have your dad in your life. You don't know how lucky you are to have a good dad. You know, your dad's a good man. You know, you're lucky." And he, at a very young age, blew my mind where he said, he's like, "Yeah, Dad, people say that all the time, but they also don't know what it's like to not be with your mom." And I always like hold on to that because it's like for him, it was painful. As much as I was trying to do as a single father and be there, it's still only half of the puzzle. And so that taught me a lesson always to be able to keep a perspective, keep a balanced perspective about everything. It's good and bad with no matter what situation that you're in. So
Yeah,
that's the way I carry it.
you know what? I look at that too because, of course, I mean, we talk about, it was my mother, and it was five of us, and then I'll go back to what we were talking about in the beginning, being the youngest, because then, like you said, there's a separation, and especially if there's you being the youngest, and then of course they're older. There's a separation where you're kind of yearning for that relationship.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But then, as you grow older, the gap, so to speak, decreases. But then again, that relationship may not,
Yeah,
and I think we've all been through that. And then
yeah.
talking about your son, like one thing, a guy poured into me, and I'll come back to what you were saying was, and I do it. I see fathers and I see sons, and I'll pull the young man over and say, "You don't know how great your dad is. Let me tell you about your dad." I usually know him, and say little things,
Yeah.
and a dad appreciates that. But now you put it another way, like, and I think our communities have actually, we kind of bought that lie, and I'm gonna say it like that. When I say bought the lie, like, we buy the lie like all dads are, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna talk more about this. All the dads are no good dads, or dads are not in their life.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's not keep saying that.
yeah,
Let's not go around saying, "Oh, you don't know how lucky your dad is to be." No, let's stop saying that.
yeah.
Let's,
Yeah. Let me just jump in and just
yeah,
say,
absolutely.
I would say in those situations, again, what it taught me is when you get an opportunity to talk to a child in that situation, ask the child how they're doing, right?
Mm.
Start with them and how they doing. How's your mom? How your dad? How you feeling? Or what's going on with how just figure out where they are and what their perspective is. Even if you say, so your dad got you out here today, huh? Your dad, because people used to also say that all the time. Your dad dragging you around with you, huh? And sometimes he was not happy about it, right? But we do what we do as parents to try to either pour into our children or at least have them with us so we can fulfill the obligation of being a parent while still living our life, right? And so sometimes it's against the kid's will. So I always say start with the kid first and check with them and see how they're doing. And then you can start into, you know, digging behind the scenes, especially if you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, right? The example you gave, you said, you know the parent, but it's still something to be mindful of. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? And I think too, like, even for you as an individual, being like you said, a single father, you just dropped a gem. I mean, even for anybody that's listening, you just dropped a gem. Even before you make that kind of approach, check with the kid. So now I'm thinking about you as being a young father. Like, this kid is actually this. I'll say this young man is actually teaching you at the same time.
Absolutely.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because I think a lot of times we miss that point.
Mm,
And I know raising that had to have a certain level of pressure that was on, but
mhm,
still you were given enough flexibility to actually learn from your son the
mm,
do's and the don'ts, or just how he was feeling.
mm,
Be able to catch his expressions, be able to catch, to really get into his mindset.
mm.
And I think that plays a vital role in even in you becoming who you are, and we're gonna talk about that. So I'm gonna drop back a little bit, or we're gonna drop back, and I want you to tell me about more about this young Eric as we move forward.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, what's interesting, I always say that in a way I kind of feel fortunate. It's that double-edged sword again thing. I feel like I was born between generations. I was born in 1969, right at the end of the year, so right between two decades. Um, I also grew up at a time where, my brothers came up in Philly in the gang war era and the Rizzo era, right? And they were out in the streets. They experienced a lot of that. Thank God none of them were hurt or harmed seriously. None of them locked up or anything like that. So my family is definitely blessed in terms of them being able to live through that. And then also think about, but I'm leaning more towards the video game generation, and I came up with a almost totally different experience than they did, even though there was only, like I said, maybe 5, 6 years difference between us. And so, you know, I've always appreciated my mother and my mother's ability to make space for me to be me, right? And this is something, we've heard of the term, youngest child syndrome or middle child syndrome or oldest child. And a lot of that is real, right? Because just the nature of what it is to be a parent and raise a family. And a lot of times people say, oh, the youngest child is always spoiled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they get all these other siblings and they get all the stuff from those siblings. And the parent ain't trying to learn to be a parent with the last kid like they was with the first kid, and making mistakes and all that. By the time you get to the last kid, you kind of figured it out. um and so I'll give my mother credit because she was a working mom, single mom, also living in a household with her mother and her brother, so we had a multi-generational family.
Mm-hmm.
She was a she was a nurse that worked third shift, so oftentimes I only got to see her for a couple of hours early in the morning and late at night. um but she did what she could do to make sure that her sons turned out well and that we weren't sucked into the nonsense out in the street. um and yeah, I credit her with my love for travel. I credit her for my love for reading, just having an inquisitive mind, and loving, like, to be around people or to be like a host, because we always had like different things going on at our household. So I grew up. I really did have a great experience as a child. Um, Even when it comes to my father, who wasn't present on a regular basis, but I knew him. He was around, and even when he would call up sometimes, and I grew up. My father had a drinking problem at one time, and when I was much younger, and oftentimes what would happen is I would get random phone calls, right? And she'd be like, "Your dad's on the phone. You want to talk to him?" I'll talk to him, and it was he obviously had some liquid courage to get
Yeah.
up the courage to call me, and to because he knew he was wrong, I knew he wasn't around, but he still wanted to close that gap, right? And then we would be on the phone, and as a kid, as a kid, you don't really care a lot of times, or unless you're really angry, which I wasn't. And the reason why I wasn't is because every time I would get off the phone, my mom would be like, "You okay? Yep. You cool? Anything you want to talk about? Nope. All right, go ahead outside and play."
Wow.
She will always check in with me, and to make sure I was okay. And I say that, I point that out because I couldn't appreciate it then, but years later, someone else who's very close to me had a similar experience and wound up hating their father.
Mm.
And they hated their father because they heard their mother talking bad about their father. And so the fact that my mother never shared anything negative, never talked bad about him, even though he was struggling and clearly not present and not able to contribute, um, that's another blessing. And I know I was able to grow up without that burden on my heart. So honestly, from there on, it was just, I mean, I did the usual kid stuff, skateboard and huffy bikes, and was into art, and you know, somewhat
Where,
introspective,
where'd
a
you
little
end
bit.
up going to school at? I mean, I know after, tell us about your little high school years and college years.
You know what's interesting? I did pretty well in high school. I went to Simon Grass, by the way, 96, 87 Bulldogs. Um, but I actually didn't go to college. I didn't go straight to college. Let me say that. Um, I actually wound up getting a job as an artist apprentice. I was a sign painter. Um, I did a bunch of hands-on, like old school,
Okay, okay,
old
okay,
school.
okay. You know I'm gonna stop you
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
I want it. Well, first of all, I'll say this: I am a lover of arts for one,
Mm,
all arts. Um, but tell me about this artist. Tell
mm,
me this gift that you discovered, and you know, because what I find out with artists, there's a certain level of freedom
mm,
that you have
mm-hmm,
when you create. You know, I write a little poetry every now and then, and I
mm-hmm,
remember even as I write, there's a level of healing, as you would say, but
mm-hmm.
there's a level of freedom. Tell us about this artist and what caused you to create this masterpiece.
You know, I can't say what caused me to create it. And I'm gonna get a little deep on this one
Absolutely.
because I came across this concept a few years ago. The word inspiration. If you look up the Latin word inspiration, the root is to inspire, but it also shares the common root of respire or respiration. It means the breath or air, right? And that, so the concept of inspiration is something being breathed into you, right? The idea that a lot of the ancients had was that inspiration was a gift from outside that came to you to want with a desire to be manifested in some kind of way. And if you didn't act on that inspiration, it would leave you and go to somebody else to then be manifested, right? And so this thing about creation and what caused me to create, I was always inspired to create, to express something, like most artists, that we don't know where it comes from. We just know it's deep inside. A lot of times people say, oh, it's my feelings, it's how I'm feeling, I want to express, right? I want to express what was inspired into me. But the reality is that we don't know where it originates from. We just know that it needs to get out. And I
Let me
think
say
for
this real
me,
quick because
yeah.
I think you'll get this, and you can just chime in after because you just of course you dropping gem about the being inspired, and you said the breath.
Mm-hmm.
So only thing I could think, and then you said only thing I could think about was when you said the breath, and we talk about this gift and how it's being released. I could only think about the inhale,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think about the exhale
Mm-hmm.
because that's what it produces. It produces that art,
Yeah.
and you just take it from there.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is something. So I need to plug something real quick because I'm
Absolutely.
actually, I need to jump to the present before we go backwards a little bit because you just helped me make this connection. I'm currently working on an event for WHYY where I'm currently employed at, highlighting Black men in media. And one of the subtexts or the through lines that I've kind of want this event to highlight is the power of self-expression through media and what it can do for us, therapeutically, right? What it can do for us on a mental and spiritual, emotional level, right? And so, yeah, this idea of art, right? Art is the oldest human language in existence. The oldest. Like it's not like spoken word. Like we could talk about languages, right? But we didn't have an actual language before we were painting on walls, right? And that was our way of like conveying messages and information to one another, whether those messages and information was related to the outside world or whether it was related to our visions or our imagination or our feelings, right? Like when you look at human existence and look at art, yo, like there's some beautiful amazing art that's hundreds of thousands of years old, like incredible. And so that is for me, it just shows that it's innate in us and as human beings. And if you're not doing it, if you're not creating something from the inside out, you're not living fully.
Mm.
You're not fully expressing yourself. And it could be a drawing, it could be a painting, it could be knitting, it could be spoken word, it could be so many different things, right? But it's got to be this process of recycling, like getting this thing out. I think about the fact that when we sleep, while we dream, like why do humans dream? We dream because we spend all of our waking time taking in information, even stuff that we don't want or that we're not even conscious about. We take in information all day long while we're up. And then when we sleep, dreaming is a process, right? It's processing all the information that we've had or that we've taken in. And then the fact that we remember some of our dreams, no matter how weird they are, it's a reconfiguration of all the things we've experienced for that day. When you get a chance to like actively engage in the creation of art, like that's taking control of that process that your brain does automatically.
And
And you kind of
how did
yeah
you express your art? I mean, what is you know uh, I know there's a lot of different ways to express
yeah.
it as far as whether you drew, you painted. What were some of the things you were doing?
I was a visual artist, so I primarily focused in pen and ink, pencil, watercolor, acrylics, and then kind of expanded out there in terms of like subject matter. I can't lie. I was a teenage boy, so I was drawing girls and women all the time. But even that, not in like a sexualized way, although
Because
that did come
because
about
it's
eventually.
art. It's art.
I mean, nude figures have been
Mm-hmm.
around forever, but it wasn't just that, right? It was just being able to find something what I thought was beautiful
Mm-hmm.
in the world and then being able to capture that or express that. So I also did a lot of like landscapes, both
Mm-hmm.
real and like imaginary and still life. Like as an artist, if you're trying to be a visual artist, drawing what's in front of you is the best practice you could possibly do. Even though it could be the most mundane, nondescript thing, you can draw what you see. You become a better artist because what it does is it teaches you how to see what's in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us don't, we're not really conscious of what we're seeing. I mean, we're looking at stuff, but are we seeing it? Right. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the things I'm grateful for art and my young art, habit was the ability to see. I think matter of fact, there's a an old art instruction book from it's actually probably not that old, somewhere between the 1970s, and it's called How to See.
Mm-hmm.
And it's specifically for artists to be able to look at not just the light coming in, but what is the light? How is the light bouncing off an object and hitting something else? Or how is the light coming in from one side and the shadow is on another?
Yeah.
Or how is an object picking up color from another thing so that you can see a totally different color reflected in somebody's face? I could look at you as a black man sitting in front of me, and most people would say, "Oh, you brown." But I could see the blue highlights from the reflection behind you. I could see all of these, right? That's a gift.
Mm.
Like that's a gift. And it's a skill that anybody can learn
Yeah.
if we just get the time to do it. And it opens up your perspective to so many other things in the
Yeah.
world.
So you got art. Art seems to be a process of peace. I'll just say.
Mm.
Then go directly, like you said, to college. You started working. What are some of the other things that you did?
Um, well, I did wind up at the University of Arts. Um,
Oh wow.
I studied there. I only studied there a year though. And what was interesting, and this is something that as a black man, black boy from any urban area was interesting is that I was able to walk out of my house, walk down the Broad Street and get on the subway and go to college And the college itself was a totally different environment. But what would happen at the end of the day, I was get back on the subway, come back home, and I
Mm-hmm.
was back in that same home environment. And what I was doing when I would get home, and I can't say it's anybody's fault, but this is what happens. What I would do is I walk in the door, I put my portfolio down, and now I'm back home.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I wasn't engaged in the process of studying my work like my classmates were, because some of them were from out of town, so they staying on the campus, they staying in dorms, or the reality is where they had a different type of focus and a different type of
Yeah.
support. So I always tell, again, jumping back to the present, I tell parents all the time to figure out how to be present and encouraging,
Mm-hmm.
because if you're not paying attention, it's so easy for all of us to fall back into our normal routine and our rhythm and a habit. And so I didn't fail out, by the way. I
Mm-hmm.
just stopped going. Like, I actually had a conversation with my mother one day, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not going back. And I didn't get no pushback, no argument, no bonk over the head,
None.
nothing, nothing. When I think back about it, I'm like, wow, she must have really had something else on her mind that day, because it was just like, what you gonna do? Well, you got to get a job then.
Yeah.
All right.
So
But
what did you end up doing?
oh man, I've worked in so many different careers um, over the course of my life. I think, I remember one thing that I did was, I worked for Sears.
Mm.
Sears used to have a warehouse up on Roosevelt Boulevard. I worked in that warehouse, right? A lot of people know what's there now. The steeple is still there, but the building has been gone.
Yeah.
Um, I used to work there. I packed fish for Mrs. Paul's. A lot of people didn't know there was a Mrs. Paul's packing plant here in Philadelphia.
Oh wow.
Um, and then I kind of bumped around a little bit. I actually used to be a nursing assistant. So I went to school for a little while to become a nursing assistant. And that's actually where I met my son's mother and when I became a father. Um, and then the most profound like career or work experience that I had early on was the fact that, so I was working as a nursing assistant. Horrible job. I was great in my class. I was like top of the class. But when I actually had to go into a nursing home and take care of people, horrible job. Too much of an empath, too feeling, miserable situation. So I got fired. Um, and when I had custody of my young son at the time, and I knew I needed benefits for him and insurance for him. So I signed up for a welfare work ready program.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wound up having to go down to Broad Cecil B. Moore, right there near Progress Plaza, and I was sitting in a class, and it was almost all women. And I never forget Kinetic Kendra, the facilitator. Her name was Kendra, and she made us do this memorization thing, right, with connecting names to adjectives. And so Kinetic Kendra asked me, well, if you could do anything, what would you do? What are you good at? And growing up in a house full of boys, my mom always had the motto: if you break it, you fix it,
Mm-hmm.
because we ain't got no money to pay for it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I always grew up with relatively handy and creative. And so I remember telling somebody in the class, yeah, I want to work with my hands. I want to, like, I don't know, maybe be a carpenter or something like that. And I'll never forget, this young lady was in the class. She said, my husband is in a carpentry class up the street.
Mm.
She said they're getting ready to take the test. And I was like, up the street where? She's like, literally, it's like 3 blocks up the street. I'm gonna call him and I'm gonna ask him where the address is. And she did that. She gave me the address. And I went there, and they were on the last week of a 8-week program preparing to take the carpenter's test to be in the carpenters union.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in there that night and I was like, just sign me up. Like, just put my name on the list. Like, I'm gonna sit here in this class tonight, but the application day is next week. Put me on
Yeah.
that list.
Yeah.
And I got in. And I was probably one of, so every year the carpenters union, they take in apprentices, and there's always more applicants than there are positions. And so that year I think there were 300 people applying for positions. And I was one of only a handful of Black people, because there's Black men and women, that actually got into the class. And that changed my life, because
Wow.
I went on to finish my 4-year apprenticeship. I became a journeyman. I worked on some of the most prominent buildings here in the city of Philadelphia.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, I mean, that's so that for me, that was like everything I was doing before, I was just trying to figure it out. And it was that welfare to work program that kind of gave me a little, like, just a little bit of luck.
Yeah.
Because what's the odds that that day for that conversation is going to coincide with that day at that class a couple blocks away?
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, that's actually amazing. But I think too that shows a certain level of resiliency, perseverance, because of, you could have just. I mean, you had the determination that this is where I'm going to be. Put me in the next class. This is where I want to be.
Yeah.
So I think that has a big level of resilience and perseverance and determination.
And I want to share something else, like even before that, because I really had to reflect on this, right? Remember, I mentioned I walked into that class for the
Mm-hmm.
welfare to work program. First of all, as a man, a young
Mm.
Black man, to even sign up for welfare
Especially
at
during
the
those
time,
times. Yeah.
at that time, dudes were out on the corner. They were like, yo, I'm gonna go out here, I'm gonna hustle, I'm gonna sling, I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna stick people up, I'm gonna do all kinds. So to be able to kind of like have enough perspective to be able to say there's nothing wrong with this. I'm a man, yes, but I'm also a parent. I have a I have a child that I need to take care of. And I need to do it in a way that's not going to jeopardize him or me, right?
That's good.
That right there, that
Yeah.
for me is what I want our audience, like the listeners, to take away from this conversation and be able to check our egos to make the best decision that's then going to impact you and your family's life. That piece right there. Everything else, nothing but God.
Yeah.
Because I had to step into that,
Mm-hmm.
which is big. Like we're conditioned as men to not do those kind of things,
Yeah.
to follow the typical path. So yeah.
So what happens after, you get it, you went to school, and then, I guess, like you said, you worked in some of the most prominent buildings in the city. Um, what what are you doing now?
Well, the journey was interesting because I managed to work in the Carpenters Union as a carpenter for about 10 years. A little less than 10 years, because I remember I had a conversation on one of my jobs. My mother was ill, and again, I'm a single parent, right? So I'm a single parent working on a construction site. And my son also fell ill, had some doctor's appointments. And I remember that I took the day off because my son was sick. And then I needed to do a series of other things for my mother and son for that week. So I called my foreman on the job. I said, yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't make it in today. Listen, I'm gonna need to take some time off because I'm taking care of my family and they're
Mm-hmm.
sick and things like that. Oh, Eric, don't worry about it. No, no problem. Okay. I said, I'll be in tomorrow. I'll pick up my tools and stuff. And when I'm ready, I'll give you a call back. Okay, sure, no problem. So I get to the job. This was University City out near 38th and Chestnut. We were building that huge complex out there. And I get on the job. The guy tells me, can you still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
The guy tells me, the foreman tells me, as I'm picking up my tools, I tell him, I'll call you in a couple of weeks when I'm ready to come back. He said, don't bother. I said, what? He said, don't bother. We don't need people like you. And this is a little short Irish dude talking to me, a Black guy, and said, we don't need people like you. So you know what I thought immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what is this? What is this about? He said, we got a building that needs to be finished, and there's a guys lined up around the block to take your place. You're nothing but a number. We can get somebody else. You don't need to call me back. And then as I was leaving, I saw my foreman. We used to call him Big Ugly, but it was this big towering lurch looking dude. And I told him, I said, you know what just happened? He said, why'd you tell him that? Why'd you tell him that you're just going to be gone for a little while? I said, because I'm trying to be professional. I thought I was, that's what I'm supposed to do. He's like, oh man. He's like, I don't know. That nobody does that. That don't look good.
Mm.
I said, you know what? I've been with this company for long enough time. I got the owner's phone number. I'm gonna call the owner. So the next day I called the owner, and the owner told me, he said, oh, you know what? He said, no, he told me that you just wanted to go, you wanted to sit home and collect a check. I said, what? Wait a minute. How is that possible? How do you get that from what I shared? So I told the owner everything. He said, oh, you know what, Eric? Must have been a misunderstanding. You know what? When you're ready to come back, you call me. Okay? Bet. I called him 2 weeks later. What do you think happened?
Hmm.
Never picked up the phone again. And from that moment, what that taught me was that I'm never going to let another man tell me when I can feed my family.
Mm.
I'm never going to let another man tell me when I can stop and take care of my loved ones. So I went on and I started my own general contracting business. And I ran that business successfully for 10 years.
Wow.
And that was, again, out of like this response of like, so you can't tell me when to show up and when to feed my family and when to take care of them. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a number and I'm easily replaceable. No,
Mm-hmm.
that's not. No, you're talking to the wrong dude. And so I went on and again started my own construction business. Thankfully, I was fortunate to be able to hire predominantly Black workers, Black subcontractors.
Yeah.
Um, I did light commercial and residential remodeling from 2007 to about 2017. And then I eventually wound up shutting that business down and getting into what is really, part of another extension of what my calling is, community engagement.
Yeah. Now, why community engagement?
So for the entire time of what I just shared, like it goes back to me being a single parent. Um, I had a home that I was renting from one of my brothers and in North Philly on Stillman Street, um, single parent. And I had only had my son for maybe about 6 months, maybe a year or so. And I knew I needed some help. And I came up on my front porch and I came across this catalog from a place called PASEP. And for those that don't know, PASEP stands for Pan African Studies Community Education Program. It's a program that's existed on Temple University's campus since I think 1975
Wow.
with Annie Hyman, the late Nana Annie Hyman started this program on Temple's campus specifically for, the Black population and residents that lived in North Philadelphia around Temple to be able to come on Temple's campus and experience it. And so I'm looking at this thing and it's like a whole host of different classes and stuff. And I opened it, turned it to a page, and it was a class called Frontline Dads.
Mm.
And I said, you know what? I said, this is meant to be. I said, I need to find out what this is about. And it turns out that that listing was the first listing that Reuben Jones, his first year home from serving time, where he started Frontline Dads in prison with other brothers that were serving time. This was the
Now, who
first.
is Reuben Jones?
Reuben Jones is the founder of Frontline Dads. He's a amazing community servant and activist here in the city of Philadelphia. Um, he is, active in issues surrounding not only fathers but Black men, returning citizens, um, voter education, criminal justice reform, like you name it. Reuben is really just an exemplary person, just in terms of like the origin of his story. His story all starts as his desire to be a better father. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I signed up for that class and got a chance to meet Reuben. I got a chance to meet brother Yumi Odom. I got a chance to meet an entire community of people who were seeking like to be better, whether that was just trying to get their GED, or somebody studying the law of attraction, or somebody taking taekwondo or tai chi or karate, because the program offered all of these different amazing classes, and the majority of them were taught by Black instructors, some of them from Temple, and they were all low cost. And so that that led me into, from being a student, I then became a board member for Frontline Dads and a volunteer at PASEP, which then led to me becoming, active in my community in a dozen different ways 20 plus years ago. This
And
is so
started
it's a,
you started your own nonprofit.
I did. My nonprofit is called the Fathering Circle. It's a peer support organization designed to help fathers be better parents and co-partners with their parenting partners. Um, and I started that along with Billy Yalowitz and Les Rivera, my two co-founders. We came together as a result of an event organized called Philadelphia Assembled. It was an art as social justice movement that actually my oldest sister, who's now past transition, um, actually called me and let me know, because Billy and Les had already met, and they were looking for people because they wanted to do something around fatherhood, but it was an art exhibit. They just wanted to
Wow.
talk to dads and like get their feedback and then create some piece of artwork or movement or photography. Les is an amazing
Mm-hmm.
Puerto Rican born film maker, and Billy Yalowitz, an amazing professor, Temple, Tyler School of Art, dance, movement, theater. I mean, he's done a bunch of things. So these gentlemen were kind of like looking to create something. And my sister, Denise, called me because
Mm.
she knew that I was active in more of like the social service, volunteer, like programmatic space of fatherhood. And we connected, and it was life changing, absolutely life changing.
Now you said you currently working for a local station in Philadelphia. Uh,
Yes, yes. So I'm currently work for WHYY, which is Philadelphia's PBS affiliate, as their manager of the community and engagement division at WHYY. And I'm blessed to say that that position all stems from the result of my volunteer work.
mm,
Really just being out here, meeting people where they are, wanting to help people, um, and really wanting to be like a conduit to resources and services for folks.
yeah, and I won't even say it's just because of your volunteer work. It's just because of the man that you are. The
Mm,
fact that
thank you.
the path that was laid before you, some things that you went through, the fatherhood, the example that you displayed as as the song say, good father.
Mm,
Uh, the ability to understand people, the ability to communicate, the ability to show the perseverance when things get tough. So it wasn't just your
mm,
volunteer work. It
mm,
was just who you created. You even talked about that at the particular job, that the reason why you told the truth was because you were being professional. That's
mm.
the respect that, we talked about this earlier in
Yeah.
what you're getting ready to embark on. It's the respect that you displayed. So when people see that, or that opportunity came up, it was more than what they seen was your volunteer work. It was the
Mm,
respect they had for you as a man. So I definitely
mm.
commend you on it.
Appreciate that.
And
Definitely appreciate that.
let me ask you. This is the tough one. I want to see how you're going to answer.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
What is the plans for the future? What do you see for the future and what Eric wants to do?
Hmm. What do I see for the future? What I see for my future. First of all, let me start by saying, because of my past, I see a future, right? And
Mm,
I say that to say that I have been through some adversity. Like I've been through, I didn't tell you why I closed my business. I didn't tell you all like the really like so there's I've been through some stuff. And you know what? I'm still here. And so I'm grateful for the things that I've been through because it taught me what I'm made of and the resiliency that I have so that I do know that I have a future no matter what happens, right? That I'm going to be able to persevere and work through that. But I also see, I see happiness, man. Like I'm engaged to a beautiful woman, you know, we've got a loving blended family. Um, we're going on vacation in a couple of weeks. You know what I mean? The weather is nice. And so, you know, I know it would make her feel better if I had like a long term, 5 year, 10-year plan or whatever. And I kind of do, but most of it is rooted in just being present and being happy and being loving and supportive to the people around me. From there, oh, you could do anything if you got all of that. So that's what I see for my future.
Yeah,
Just
and
love and happiness.
yeah, and that's great, man. And I really appreciate you actually taking this opportunity just to come on and share your story. I mean, this is what the Let's Go show is about and what motivates people. But before
Mm.
you go, uh, what are some words that anybody that's listening, words, I say words of wisdom because that's what it is, that you would want the listening audience to know?
Whew, how much time you got? Man, I feel like, you know, the things that I want to share are kind of are the themes of our conversation, right? To know that you are loved and that in rooted in that love, whether regardless of what your family looks like, you're loved by somebody. And so from that core, you can feel free to explore and express yourself with the goal of being a better version of yourself and to find some way, some form of self-expression that's going to like add some beauty to the world. Because if you can do that, like you're nurturing what's inside you, you're nurturing the best part of yourself. And the world needs more people like that, right? There's a lot of pain and trauma that's out here in the world. And I feel like a big part of it is because people don't know how to process. We don't have a way to process a lot of the pain and trauma. And so you got to find a healthy way to do it, right? I know it's a lot of people out here self-medicating and doing all kinds of stuff. And you do what you know, right? But there's better ways to do that. If you can figure out a way that nourishes your spirit from the inside out, it'll be the best thing you could possibly do for yourself and for the people around you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. This has been a Let's Go show with Eric Marsh. And you know what I say? Let's go, baby. Peace. I'm out.